Our gospel this morning is Jesus choosing his disciples. It's a story of doubt, perseverance, and faith, and parallels stories in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark. These disciples are fishermen, and rather than speaking over their heads, Jesus speaks to them in a language they can understand. He uses words that relate to their vocations as fishermen. But in all three Gospels, we learn that they leave their fisherman lifestyle and follow him. So our gospel this morning is really a gospel of mission. There, standing beside the lake, crowds of people pressing in on him, Jesus tries to put some room between him and the people and gets into one of the boats. Sitting in the boat in the middle of the lake, he teaches the crowds. When he's done, he looks at Simon and says, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." The disciples-to-be had been fishing all night and had caught nothing. I think we can all well imagine what they were thinking. Tired, weak, frustrated, probably even hungry, and maybe even worried about where they will get their next meal. The last thing they probably wanted to do was drop their nets and do the heavy, tedious work that had brought them nothing for the last few hours. Near despair, probably their lower backs aching. Okay, I might be transferring that onto them. They were done for the night, packed it in, and were washing their nets. Simon couldn't believe what he was being asked to do. They had spent hours to no avail. You can almost see the doubt in his head and hear him saying, "You've got to be kidding. You want us to set these nets again, drag them out, and wait? Wait for what? There's nothing out there." But he doesn't say that. Instead, he says, "Master, we've worked all night long, but caught nothing. Yet if you say so, I will let down the nets." A little skeptical, but also a little trusting. Simon lets down his net, not expecting anything to change, not expecting anything to be different. But something was different. Simon knew he was in the presence of God. He knew who Jesus was, and that the impossible was possible. Jesus was in his boat teaching the people, and he had already taught and healed many, including Simon Peter's mother-in-law. And so with an ounce of hesitation and a healthy dose of doubt, Simon accepts his call to follow him. And lo and behold, the nets were overrun with fish. So many fish that the nets were beginning to break. This is the one major development in the Gospel of Luke that sets our story apart from the other Gospels. The disciples in Jesus' presence are asked to lower their nets again, and they catch more fish than they can ask or imagine. It's a story of perseverance, trust, and faith, but it's also a story of mission. Jesus uses the abundance of fish as a symbolic way of showing the successful mission Jesus is starting, and that Simon and the others will continue. Without Jesus, there was scarcity. With Jesus, there was abundance. It's a story of faith that doesn't accept the status quo and recognizes that there may be more to life than what they know. It's a story that reminds us that sometimes with a little bit of trust and perseverance, the ordinary can become extraordinary. I think we've heard that before. That abundance can grow out of scarcity. Even though it appears that nothing has changed in their lives, in fact, everything has changed. Their lives will never be the same. It's a story of mission and a story of purpose and required trust and faith. Hebrews says that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. One minute there was no fish, the next minute there was. It took faith to drop the net and hope for something different, or expect that something would change. And finally, it took faith to leave behind the life they knew, to follow Jesus in a life that would be filled with the unknown, possible rejection, and the need for courage. So why in the world would they follow him? Well, I would suggest that they followed him because they knew that in the midst of all that could be negative, there just might be more positive. Jesus had spent time in their midst. They weren't following a stranger. They had built a relationship with him and had come to trust him. And they had built a relationship with each other and trusted, or would come to trust each other. The unknown, rejection, and the need for courage sound so negative. But they don't have to be when you know who you are following and you know you aren't alone. Together they can create a time of excitement and growth and opportunity. They can create a time when new doors open and new relationships can be built and formed. I wonder, in the midst of their fears, Simon and the others knew that. I wonder if in the midst of the unknown, if they knew that trusting and relying on God, rather than just themselves, would help them grow in their faith and grow together as disciples. Now, sadly, the disciples would come to know rejection, just as Jesus came to know rejection. And I suppose there's a possibility we will too, if we haven't already. There's no doubt that rejection hurts. Failures, whatever they may look like in our lives, hurt. But just like Simon, we are being called to carry on. Just like Simon, we have fears of failure and fears of rejection. And we no doubt worry about having a lack of courage or being scared that we do not know what we are doing or where we are going. But I believe that is good and healthy and, yes, hard. As a community, we are constantly being called to step out of our comfort zone and leave our boat behind us. And we are going to need the strength of God to carry on God's mission in this world. And we're going to need a lot of prayer to figure out how we live out that mission here in this place. Remember, it isn't our mission. It's God's. Just like Simon and the others, we are on the cusp of something new. I think this is an exciting time for the community of Transfiguration. First Friday returned this past Friday with Jeopardy. It was a lot of fun. I don't want to gloat, so I won't. I'm sure you'll hear more about it. We're looking forward towards vestry with an almost full slate of volunteers That's exciting and something to be celebrated. We have babies in the congregation who I suspect will grow up with built-in babysitters and numerous honorary grandparents and aunts and uncles. I have to tell you, I stood there on Friday watching baby Evelyn being passed around from grandmother to grandmother to grandmother. I view myself as an honorary aunt to many nephews and uncles, and I'm waiting for my turn to hold baby Evelyn because I know they're going on a trip soon, so I have to get my oar in. But when they come back, I know for a fact, even if I'm not here, she will grow up with many grandparents, aunts, and uncles, and honorary sisters and brothers. And so will baby Mila. As a community, I will add as well, today the door opened, Patty and I were standing at the back in the narthex, and the door opened, and who should run up those stairs but Bobby. And he said, "It is so good to see all of you today." And that was we were just as excited to see him as he was to see us. And I think that God's mission lives in this place and lives within the people of Transfig. And I celebrate that. As a community, we need to be able to risk and try new things. The love's already here. And perhaps we need to risk and repeat some old things in new ways. We need to be willing to take that phrase that everybody smiles at when they hear it, that phrase that sadly has become attached to churches. I think most of us know the one, We tried that before and it didn't work. Everybody know that one? And change it. Maybe we could change it to, we tried that before, and perhaps now's the time we try it again. We need to risk and rejoice in the big fish and the little ones that we might catch along the way, or better yet, welcome along the way. And we need not be scared of the times when there are no fish at all. We're being called to fulfill God's mission and to further God's kingdom in this world. So perhaps as the season of Lent approaches, we can make it our Lenten discipline to prayerfully discern how we might consider doing that. With God's help, I'm sure we will come up with an answer, or maybe even two. Thanks be to God. Amen.